This podcast is brought to you by Bonus Room Productions and We Own This Town.
I am Jason T. Mears, Esquire.
And I'm Kelly Hoyle Bullock.
And we are Dimas Today. How's it going, Kelly?
Happy New Year, JT.
Happy New Year, buddy. Happy New Year.
2019, we made it, man.
Barely, by the skin of our teeth.
I know. Let me just say this. I started off the new year going straight to the doctor. That was the very first thing I did, and got a steroid shot in my butt.
But I mean, you look a lot stronger.
Thank you.
A lot healthier.
I immediately felt better.
Let me break down my holiday break for you. We had 2 cases of pink eye. We had 7 ear infections, 1 case of the flu, 4 sinus infections, and 1 emergency room visit. And that was between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve.
Man, I'm already exhausted.
Yeah.
Just listening to you. My eyes hurt.
Yeah.
My ears hurt.
It's hard to breathe.
Man.
It's hard to hear.
That family life you lead, brother.
No, it's terrible. Don't do it. I'm kidding. It's all worth it every moment.
It's okay because I'm not.
Yeah, fair. So, holiday, did you get any awesome gifts? Anything that was excellent that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I got the Beastie Boys book. I'm in the middle of that right now. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's great. And
I got some shelves for my records.
Oh,
so
sweet.
That was cool.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. You got to get those up off the floor. I know you've been living like a slob, just like milk crates and, like no bed frame.
Yeah, and I just want to verify for the listeners that I do enjoy the Beastie Boys, and I have a record collection.
So, if you can't pin
These
him
things
down,
make total sense.
Right? If you can't pin him down, maybe now you can. Cool. So, Bill and Ted, man, it's been a while since we've been in here. It's so good to see you. I'm so stoked to sit down and talk about some more Bill and Ted, man. We've got some good stuff coming up these next few episodes. I'm really excited.
Yeah. More interviews coming. Mm-hmm. As we approach the 30th anniversary of Excellent Adventure 2.
Man, so
how about that? 30 years.
That makes sense. It doesn't. That doesn't seem like so terribly long ago at all, does it? Oh my God,
not at all.
We're so old.
Like when you could sit down in Pizza Huts.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't just a crappy buffet. Okay, so we today are definitely going to talk about at least 2 things, right? We're going to talk about sequels, trilogies. Mm-hmm. We're going to discuss that in relation to the Bill and Ted universe, what we know about Bill and Ted Face the Music,
right?
And kind of what we hope for Bill and Ted.
Yeah. Maybe some casting what ifs.
Oh, that would be cool.
Suggestions.
That would be really cool. And then also we're going to spend a few minutes because over the holidays, you were gifted these most excellent packs of Bill and Ted trading cards.
Yes. A good friend of the pod, Amanda, gave us some awesome, most excellent, most atypical Bill and Ted's movie cards.
Yeah, and these were a lot of fun to open and go through, and we're going to share them with you a little bit.
Is the bodacious trip to San Dimas, California still possible, you think? Or is that expired, maybe?
I am actually... Oh, you know what we did? So we opened these when we were celebrating at a bar. We were drinking, and we tried scratching off the front of these cards, mm-hmm. But the thing is, they actually open up, and the scratch is on the inside. So we're gonna scratch these off.
Excellent.
And we're gonna see if we can win.
Glad we're taking another pass at this.
And the
somewhat sober now.
If one of these does win, we know a lawyer. So I will be fighting pro set tooth and nail to get to San Dimas. We're gonna do this.
Bodacious Esquire.
All right. So, film sequels. How Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey fits in with the tradition of sequels. What it does right, which is pretty much everything. What it might have done wrong, where it could have gone differently, and then what will the third movie do to fit into the pantheon of trilogies. So, I want to start off with a little bit of historical perspective. People have been bemoaning the sequelism of the Hollywood studios for a while now. It seems like the past 10 years, everybody's like, oh, all we do are sequels. All we do are sequels. First sequel made by Hollywood was in 1916, The Fall of a Nation, which was a follow-up to Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a little while.
Right.
Little while. And in the 20s, Hollywood just started cranking them out. Like even the first Talkie the Jazz Singer had a sequel follow-up. So this has been going on forever.
How many Star is Borns can we possibly have?
I'm saying at least 3 more. Let's go for it. Let's
and so many lines cross now, I think, between sequels and reboots and rebooted sequels.
Well, look at The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens is a reboot and a sequel all in one. It hits all the same story beats as the first one, although updates it with new characters. So at this point, there's almost no difference.
Yeah.
You know, you have...
I love like meta sequels too. You know, like wasn't there a Elm Street where they're like shooting a movie about Elm Street?
Yes.
And then
absolutely.
the cast members start getting haunted, right?
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah. Scream did that as well. I mean, horror is great at that stuff.
Yep.
Horror is great at that stuff. But you also have all... Like Mary Poppins Returns just came out, right? They had Dick Van Dyke show up in there.
Right.
And
I hear he looks fantastic.
I bet
still.
he does.
Those twinkling eyes.
Yeah.
Man.
What a charismatic guy.
And a surprisingly like socialist movie too. I love it.
Really? Nice.
Right? I mean, it's
the first one.
The first one, yeah. I'm sorry. I've not seen the new one.
Sure.
I've just heard that Dick Van Dyke still looks like
I now know why you couldn't
$1 million.
hang out on the afternoon of December 30th. Sorry, Jason. I got plans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I look forward to your review of the sequel shortly. You without the 6-year-old daughter. So Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I'm not going to say this is ultimately necessary to have a great sequel, but I think having the creative input of at least one of either the original director or the original screenwriters, definitely the original cast, all of that plays a huge role in it.
for sure.
So we've referenced this movie 2 or 3 times on this podcast already. Gremlins 2, right? For my money, the best sequel ever made. I mean, without a doubt.
It's amazing.
Gremlins 2 is legit in my top 5 movies of all time.
Yeah, and I think Gremlins 2 just really takes a lot of what we were just talking about into account, and it's so smart.
It is. You've got
It's self-aware.
Yeah, you've got Joe Dante riffing on his own original script, right? I don't recall who directed the second Gremlins 2. I don't think it was Christopher Columbus. If only we had some sort of access to all of the world's knowledge that we could reference this. But
it was Joe Dante.
I mean, yeah, Joe Dante wrote both of them. Who directed?
He directed the
Joe
second
Dante?
one. Yep.
Nice. Oh, man. So they gave him the keys to the kingdom. They're like, Gremlins, cool. We loved it. Kids loved it. Made a ton of money. Wasn't that expensive. You do whatever you want. And then Joe Dante did whatever he wanted to and made the closest thing to a live-action cartoon that I think we'll ever see. There's even a great Key and Peele skit about the writing of Gremlins 2. And it's all right. It's all correct. And it's just wonderful. So you've got the original creative voice, and then they let him off the leash and just let him go and riff and do whatever he wants to do. I think we see a lot of that in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great sequel to compare it to. Also, it seemed like, especially with action flicks, sequels were super hot right around that time, right? Like, it's coming off the heels of Die Hard 2. Terminator 2 had to be close, maybe just a year or two later.
Yeah, Terminator 2 was a year or two later. And that's interesting because the original Terminator was probably a year or two before.
Yeah, I think it was
Bill and
84 maybe.
Was it 84? Really?
83 or 84? I could be off there.
But, it was early to mid-'80s. And then they came out with T2 like early to mid-'90s. So you're looking at like a gap of 5 to 7 years there, right? Between sequels, which is probably, par for the course.
Right.
But and with Bill and Ted, you're starting to tighten it up a little bit. The Porky's movies, they had a few sequels.
Young Guns 2.
Yeah,
I think of those as those were time-wise had to be really close to the Bill and Ted movies.
Oh yeah,
I think,
for
right?
sure. And it seems like movies geared toward younger audiences seem to get a lot more sequels. And I think that's just because, I mean, one, who wants to go see The Big Chill 2? The Bigger Chill, or the Huge Cold. I don't know. What would you call The Big Chill 2? The Deep Freeze?
The Deep Freeze, the hot yoga.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's the one where they get into Kevin Kline's, sweatshop employees at the shoe factory. And you're listening to the Big Chill podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where you can't always get what you want.
You absolutely cannot. Unless that's getting knocked up by Kevin Kline. Then you can.
Kevin Kline's wife being Phoebe Cates in Gremlins and Gremlins 2.
Yes. Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. We're back.
Yeah,
We're back.
we're back. We circled that up. That's Definitely not getting edited out at all. That's
No way.
no,
I'm leaving that one in, pal.
That's canon now. That's canon. So other sequels like Die Hard 2, which I absolutely love, is almost essentially Die Hard except in an airport. You know, it's story beat after story beat. You know,
they try to do a big twist with one of the villains, right?
they do.
That was a little more outlandish than the first flick.
Sure. But a lot of fun. Everything they did was a little bit bigger. You know, a little bit bigger. The scales were a little bit higher. There was actually a hostage situation as opposed to just, bank robbers or robbers pretending to be terrorists. They were actually terrorists, trying to. So, love Die Hard 2. And, of course, Die Hard 2, William Sadler, king of the 90s, sequel to 80s movies. It was also The Grim Reaper. The Lethal Weapons, they had... I'm fine with saying that it's not just the Lethal Weapon trilogy. Kelly and I have been talking about this. Trilogies, right? So you've got these movies that are 3, and it's a perfect set. It's like a great set. Tells a compelling arc. The original Star Wars trilogy.
Right. Obviously, there was Die Hard, which remained... Let's see. When did With a Vengeance come out? Like
95, 96.
95 or 96, right? And... So you had 8 years, all 3 movies, very tight, and then it wasn't until another decade, at least, right, until they decided to mess with that.
Right. So that is a trilogy. None of the movies that have the name Die Hard in them exist.
Right.
As far as this...
Indiana Jones.
Same. There's only 3
and
Indiana Jones
They
movies.
did the same thing there, yes. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. The only movie I've ever walked out of.
Side note, the only movie that I've ever walked out of was a sequel, and that was City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold.
Ooh, rough.
Yeah, because that movie was terrible. That movie was awful. Just the worst.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen City Slickers.
Yeah, well, remember, Jack Palance, who played Curly, died in City Slickers.
So did any prospects on a good sequel.
Right. So Jack Palance shows up as Curly's twin brother, and they go looking for Curly's gold.
Yeah.
And that's all I remember, except that it was terrible and I walked out. And I was too young to drive at that point. So I didn't have money for a phone call to have somebody come get me. I just left the theater and sat on a bench outside the theater waiting for my parents to pick me up.
Well, Kingdom of Crystal Skull, the 4th, and I'm using air quotations.
Everyone can see that.
Indiana Jones movie. I think when he survived the nuclear blast inside the little refrigerator.
So you're talking about the very beginning of the movie?
Yeah. Well, it's probably 20 to 30 minutes in, I think.
Is it? I thought that was like...
I think it was the end of sort of the grand opening, but it takes a minute to get there, I think. Anyway, I don't know. I stood up and left.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I eventually rewatched it all on a streaming service.
Okay.
Still felt like that was a mistake. But
Yeah. Not a fan. Not a fan. Plus, Shia LaBeouf as... What was it? Mutt? Is that his name? Mutt? They were
something like that.
They were clearly trying to hint that he might take over the franchise, and they just... No, not at all.
Yeah. Only person that should be named Mutt is a L.A. record producer, and then you marry Shania Twain.
Fair enough. Good on Mutt.
And then get divorced.
Yeah. So, Bill and Ted 3, if it's going to be a successful trilogy, let name some other successful trilogies real quick before I move on. Lord of the Rings, I would say, is pretty successful.
Lord of the Rings, Back to the Future.
Yep.
Which obviously very, very close and tied together, I think, to Back to the Future.
How's that? How are Bill and Ted?
I know we talked about that before.
I don't know how Bill and Ted and Back to the Future could possibly be tied together. You've also got the Before trilogy by Richard Linklater.
Yes, which you just finished watching?
I just finished watching this past weekend, and it was wonderful, just delightful. I cannot recommend those movies highly enough.
So with Bill and Ted's, we're talking about a substantial amount of time between the second and the third one.
Yeah,
right?
You're talking about almost 20 years.
Yeah. Are there other examples of that where that's successful?
Ooh, well, you've got that. I was a huge fan of the latest Blade Runner.
Great call.
Yeah, I
thought it was phenomenal.
I thought that was amazing.
Holds up in some ways. I like it better than the first.
I'm with you. I think it was just great. It did a wonderful job of recalling what came before it, adding something new,
Yep.
and adding its own emotional stakes.
Okay. Nice.
So,
nice call.
Yeah, I will say it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done. How much time was there between Chinatown and the two Jakes?
15 years, maybe?
I would
right?
argue that was not successful.
No.
Yeah, so it can go either way. But with the two Jakes,
Almost as bad as Caddyshack 2.
oh my God. Yeah, terrible.
I mean, that has to be in the top 5 of worst sequels ever, right?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, are you counting part 3s as well? Because obviously The Godfather Part 3 was not great.
Yeah, and done
Much later.
15 years
That was
or so.
94. I remember going on Christmas Day with my grandfather and seeing our middle school PE instructor there by himself. Rest in peace, Coach Sheehy. It was just, yeah,
Coach.
Coach. It can be done. It can be successful, and we have high hopes. I have high hopes. I think.
Yeah,
you
I
do.
think so. I just with Ed and Chris and Alex and Keanu all on board.
Right. I mean, the fact that the core 4
Yeah.
are so stoked for it and so excited about it. You know, that Chris.
And I just think they're all very mindful of the legacy, and if they even shot it and was like, this is terrible, they're not going to put it out. you know?
Right. I would like to think that is going to be the case. Who knows when a studio puts money behind it and they're like, okay,
True.
we'll see. Maybe. I don't know. I have a lot of faith too, because I don't think, speaking with Chris, he was like, nobody paid us to do this. We just wanted to do it to see what would happen, what would come of it. They didn't know the characters. They had no reason to do it. Chris was even transitioning out of screenwriting at the time. They did it as a labor of love. Shot it to Alex and Keanu, and they both got on board. And that's huge. That's huge, because you have a megastar like Keanu, who's like, yeah, I'll go back and do this thing. And then an incredible director like Alex Winter, who's like, okay, you know what? I haven't acted in a long time, but I am absolutely willing to go back and do this.
Right.
I don't think, like, Alex Winter at this point in my mind has this incredible integrity of, he's kind of separated himself. He's like, yeah, that was me. I was in Bill and Ted, but now I am this other thing. I don't think you were that guy and you go back to Bill and Ted unless it's actually worth it. He's not the guy who's like, oh, Bill and Ted, cool. I'll do Bill and Ted 7, Bill and Ted Golf in Space. It's he's like, there's a lot of potential there. A lot of potential. And I'm very excited about it.
Ed did an interview and he's talking about the script that they've got written and how they're writing it keeping in mind that George Carlin has passed away. And so I imagine in the story, Rufus will have passed away, but that a character that it seems that they're going to have a character that's Rufus's daughter that's going to play a crucial role in the movie.
That's my guess.
And that's pretty neat. And
who are we talking to? We talked to somebody who told us that it was a very emotional scene. And what was it? Chris? Was Chris talking about that? But
yeah, it must have been him.
How amazing is it that we've interviewed so many people connected to these films that I can't recall who told us about the emotional highlight or the emotional scene that deals with Rufus's passing.
So who would you get to play Rufus's daughter? Would you go for a female stand-up comic of our times?
I think that would be a good call. I think that would be totally fine. Or, you could get a Saturday Night Live, some sort of comedian, for sure. For sure.
Kate McKinnon?
Yeah, she'd be an obvious choice. Somebody as sardonic as Carlin would be hard to find. If we were doing this 10, 15 years ago, I'd suggest Janine Garofalo.
Oh, yeah.
I think she would have been perfect.
Great. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if she would work too well or would connect with audiences as much. But Kate McKinnon's great, like you said. I don't know. There are a lot of good options. There are a lot of good options. And we don't know that it's going to be the daughter. We know that Bill and Ted's daughters are going to be involved in the script.
It's true.
Which is interesting because it seemed like at the end of Bogus Journey, they introduced us to Little Bill and Little Ted. That could be written away and explained by Wilhelmina and Theodosia.
I would love the idea of Little Bill and Little Ted turning out to be terrible children, and then they had daughters.
Yeah, and the daughters were awesome.
Yep.
Do you think like Little Bill and Little Ted went to go work with Uncle Deacon at his hedge fund.
Right. You know, they spent their summers caddying at Deacon Logan's golf course.
Right.
Right.
Just run and blow.
Little shitty golf pros is what those guys are.
Oh my! I don't want to hate Little Bill and Little Ted. I want to love them. I want to love them as much as their fathers obviously do after returning from medieval England. But you know what? It's interesting. So the plot of the movie, they are looking to write the one song that's going to save the future. They've written thousands of terrible songs. None of it works out. A visitor from the future, which we assume is Rufus's son or daughter, shows up and is like, you got to do this. They travel through time. They meet new historical figures, and they learn much more than they anticipated. So they also meet some musical greats. And
right.
I'm assuming one's going to be Elvis Presley because he's already been dealt with in the cartoon and the television series. But it would be cool if it was somebody else, you know, like, I don't know, man. Jimi Hendrix would be a good one, obviously. You know, like, it would be weird to do Kurt Cobain, I think.
Yeah. I don't know that I see Bill and Ted being big Nirvana fans.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, I can see that because they were definitely into the hair metal and stuff. But,
yeah.
You know, they were also like, we've talked about this on the soundtrack, the second soundtrack, how you saw the early transitions to the grunge era popping up on that, and how that soundtrack would have been completely different if it would have been released 3 years later.
I think they would have been bigger Pearl Jam fans.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay,
That just,
no,
you know.
I can see them being bigger Pearl Jam fans, like the first two, maybe up to Vitology, but I don't know if I can see Bill and Ted getting totally behind.
They'll only appreciate Nirvana later in life, which maybe that's what's happening now.
Yeah, it could
maybe they're finally entering their Nirvana phase
But
in the third movie.
Would it be weird to see them go back and talk to Kurt Cobain about songwriting, knowing that Kurt Cobain had died 2 years or 3 years after, you know, the second movie came out? Would that do you limit yourself to like boomer and metal musicians, or do you go
maybe the ghost of Lemmy from Motorhead?
Oh,
I don't
wow,
know.
that would
mean,
that would be cool.
Somehow Ozzy Osbourne's still alive, so you can't go there.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's true. And I can't imagine them spending a lot of money on digital effects to like de-age Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Historical personages, who do you think they would run into?
Gosh, I mean, do you bring any of the OG characters back, or do you make them all musicians?
My understanding from the plot synopsis is that it's going to be both.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be both. You could do like a Thomas Edison. You know?
That's true.
Thomas Edison.
Do like Les Paul.
Yeah,
the guitar inventor or something, right?
That would be great. Hedy Lamarr would be pretty cool. And yeah, so I think we both agree that this thing has a high possibility of being very, very good.
Definitely.
It's got great DNA, and I think they're going to do it right. The director that they've got lined up is perfect for it.
Yeah, definitely rumored Sadler is going to be on board.
Yes.
To reprise the Reaper. You got to bring back Grandma Missy.
You've got to. Oh my God, that'd be so great.
I hope they are able to do that. I hope that actress is available.
Yeah, and if you are listening, Missy, give us a call. We would love to interview you for this show. She's been a little hard to track down, people. We've been trying. So let's talk about these cards real quick, man.
Okay.
So Amanda gave us these awesome Bill and Ted's Most Atypical Movie cards. These things, they include photos from both films, some photos from the TV series, factoids, cast photos, like candid shots. I'm looking at one right here, which is Bill, Ted, and the Grim Reaper in heaven right after they've mugged three dudes, and they are doing Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Just amazing, and the write-up is great. Bill, Ted, and the Grim Reaper travel to a most atypical place, only a few short moments in heaven, and they've mugged three people to get their lavender garments. Bill, Ted, and the Grim Reaper must tell the gatekeeper the meaning of life. It's great. I wonder if these were actually released before the second movie came out, sometime after, if they were produced beforehand. these also include these scratch offs, which I'm going to try right here. And scratching.
You're going to win that bodacious trip.
Yeah, Sandy. Oh, man. I already see the word sorry. Sorry, dude. Try again. Well, Kelly, it's great to be back in the saddle with you. I love that we're able to keep talking about this. I'm looking forward to the next few episodes. This one has been great. Hopefully we'll get some more info on Bill and Ted 3 now, because filming is supposed to start pretty soon.
Yep, that's what we've been told. And our sources are good now. Yeah. We have accurate sources.
We actually have realistic, legitimate sources connected to the... I don't understand the world we live in, dude, but it's pretty great.
You know, it's not a bad world, especially when you're being managed by We Own This Town podcast network.
And Michael Eads, right?
And Michael Eads, yeah.
I want to thank Scott Brecklin and Scooby
Tunes
Music for the use of Walk Away, our most bodacious...
Good job with that one, buddy.
It's been a while, man. It's been a while. Most bodacious theme song. And as always, everyone, be excellent to each other.
Party on, dudes. You know, one thing I suppose we need to air is probably the most egregious thing ever done with San Dimas today. Jason completely blew an interview with William Sadler.
We had a big fish on the hook. Big fish on the hook. Reeling them in. We got a response. And these people have been wonderful. Everybody's been very responsive. We actually got, in response to one of our requests to Mr. William Sadler, the Grim Reaper himself, his agent reached out the night before and was like, hey, can you guys do 11 a.m. tomorrow? And this is the most egregious thing I've ever done for this show, against this show.
I mean, I've forgiven you in my heart.
Thank you. I had to cancel because I had a vasectomy scheduled for that exact time the next day. And, so, hey, guys, San Dimas today has wandered into vasectomy territory. I had already rescheduled the vasectomy once, and I'm pretty sure my wife would have killed me had I not gone through that procedure at that point. I mean, I can't blame her. She's given birth to 2 wonderful children. I've not done much of anything, so I figured that was the least I could do. But as opposed to actually getting to interview William Sadler, one of my favorite actors of all time, I was sitting on a slab getting altered while listening to Yellow Tango's Green Arrow on repeat, which the doctor said had never happened before. So that was...
It's great. That sounds awesome.
Is that too much information?
It might be.
I don't know. When you're editing, go back and think, is this on topic?
That whole thing's going to make it in, man, I promise.
Hey, if you need to make some cuts regarding my vasectomy, you got my permission.
Jason T. Mears, Esquire, everybody.
Yeah, I'm a dad.